There is a particular kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with the body. You know it well, even if you have never named it. It is the exhaustion of a mind that reacts to everything. The sharp comment from a colleague that replays in your head for hours, the opinion of a stranger online that ruins an otherwise peaceful evening, the small failure that spirals into a story about how you are simply not good enough. You lie awake rehearsing conversations that already happened, and inventing ones that never will. You feel controlled by forces outside yourself, as though your peace of mind is a hostage held by other people's moods, other people's judgments, and the unpredictable chaos of the world. And so you search. You read the articles, you try the morning routines, you download the apps that promise calm in 5 minutes a day. And still, underneath it all, the same restlessness returns, because none of it touches the actual root of the problem. What if the answer was never in the next productivity hack or the next piece of modern advice? What if it was already written down, over 2,000 years ago, by men who faced circumstances so brutal that our daily anxieties would have seemed almost comfortable to them? A Roman emperor who buried his own children and led his empire through plague and war, writing private notes to himself by candlelight, not for an audience, but simply to survive his own mind. A former slave who lost the freedom of his own body and yet built a philosophy so unshakable that Roman senators traveled great distances just to sit and listen to him speak. These were not men theorizing from comfort. These were men who tested their ideas against unimaginable suffering, and what emerged from that testing became the foundation for Stoicism, a philosophy that has quietly guided generals, statesmen, and thinkers for 2 millennia, precisely because it works when nothing else does. Today, we are going to strip away 3 habits, 3 patterns so deeply embedded in modern life that most people never even question them. And in removing them, something remarkable happens. You do not simply feel calmer. You become, in a very real sense, ungovernable by outside forces. You begin to master your emotions not by suppressing them, but by understanding exactly where their power actually comes from, and quietly taking that power back. The first habit to remove is the constant, almost compulsive need to control what was never yours to control in the first place. Consider how much of your daily suffering comes not from events themselves, but from your resistance to events you had no power over. The traffic that delays you, the opinion someone forms of you within seconds of meeting you, the outcome of an interview after you have already given your best answers. The Stoics called this the dichotomy of control, and it is deceptively simple to state, yet profoundly difficult to live. There are things within your power, your judgments, your intentions, your actions, your character. And there are things outside your power, other people's choices, the past, the future, the very timing of your own death. Suffering, the Stoics argued, is what happens when we confuse the two, when we pour our energy into controlling the uncontrollable and neglect the one domain where we actually hold absolute authority, which is our own mind. Marcus Aurelius, ruling an empire at war, reminded himself each morning that he would meet people who were ungrateful, arrogant, and deceitful that day, and that none of it could touch the one thing that was truly his own reasoned response. This is not passivity. This is the most radical form of power available to a human being. Because the moment you stop fighting for control over what you cannot govern, you gain complete governance over what you can. Imagine, for a moment, redirecting every ounce of energy you currently waste on other people's opinions of you into the deliberate construction of your own character. That redirection alone would change the entire trajectory of your inner life. The second habit to remove is far less discussed, yet perhaps even more transformative, the compulsive urge to announce yourself. We live in an age that rewards noise. Every ambition is meant to be broadcast. Every private goal is meant to become public content. Every emotional reaction is meant to be expressed immediately and loudly. The Stoics moved in the opposite direction entirely. They practiced a kind of strategic silence, an intentional scarcity of words and self-disclosure, understanding that power dissipates the moment it is announced. When you tell everyone your plans before you have executed them, You receive a small hit of social approval that tricks the brain into feeling as though the work is already done. When you react instantly and visibly to every insult or provocation, you hand the person who provoked you a live wire directly into your emotions, and they will pull it again and again because they now know exactly how to make you dance. Epictetus taught his students that if someone speaks ill of you, the wise response is not a passionate defense, but a simple observation. They clearly do not know the rest of your faults, or they would have mentioned those too. There is enormous strength in the pause before response, in the ambition kept quiet until it becomes undeniable through results rather than promises, in the discipline of letting your work speak in a volume your mouth never needed to. Silence, held deliberately, is not weakness. It is the sound of a person who no longer needs external validation to know their own direction. The third habit to remove is perhaps the most uncomfortable, because it strikes directly at the instinct for immediate comfort, the habit of surrendering to impulse the very moment it arises. Every unregulated appetite, every impatient reaction, every small indulgence chosen instead of the harder, better choice, chips away at something Seneca called the strength of the will. Radical self-discipline in the Stoic sense is not about punishing yourself or living joylessly. It is about becoming the kind of person whose actions are dictated by their principles rather than their passing moods. Seneca, wealthy enough to indulge in every luxury available in ancient Rome, deliberately practiced short periods of poverty, sleeping on hard floors, and eating the simplest food, not because he needed to suffer, but because he wanted to know with certainty that comfort had no grip on him. That is the deeper purpose behind delayed gratification, not deprivation for its own sake, but the quiet confidence of knowing you are the one steering your life, rather than your appetite steering you. Every time you choose the harder right action over the easier convenient one, whether that means finishing the difficult conversation instead of avoiding it, or choosing the disciplined morning instead of the extra hour of sleep, you are casting a vote for the person you intend to become. Character is not decided in the rare dramatic moment of crisis. It is built quietly and invisibly in the accumulation of 1,000 small private choices that no one else will ever witness. When these three habits are removed, something else naturally rises to take their place. And this may be the most liberating shift of all, an immunity to both criticism and praise. Because once you stop trying to control the uncontrollable, once you stop needing to announce yourself, once your discipline no longer bends to impulse, the opinions of others lose their grip on you entirely. You begin to measure yourself by your own private standard of character rather than the shifting, unreliable judgments of a crowd. And this is where the deepest Stoic teaching reveals itself, the practice the Stoics called Amor fati, the love of one's fate. Not merely tolerating hardship, but understanding that the obstacle itself is the very material from which strength is forged. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the impediment to action advances action, that what stands in the way becomes the way. Every insult you endure without reacting becomes evidence of your discipline. Every hardship you face without collapsing becomes proof of your resilience. Nothing that happens to you is wasted once you decide that everything can be transformed into fuel for the person you are building yourself into. So the question that remains is not whether you understand these principles, because understanding them is easy. The question is whether you are willing to practice them in the next small moment that tests you, the next insult, the next impulse, the next situation entirely outside your control. That is where philosophy stops being words on a page and becomes the architecture of a life. 2,000 years from now, no one will remember the opinions that once wounded you, or the impulses you once fought so hard to resist. But somewhere in the quiet accumulation of every disciplined choice you make starting today, the only person who will ever truly need to be convinced of your strength is already watching. And that person is you.